She walked in wearing a hoodie. They laughed. She walked out with Keanu Reeves, and the entire boutique collapsed behind her. You won't believe how this ends. Before we dive in, tell us, have you ever been judged for how you look? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for tomorrow's powerful true story. The boutique known as Maison Eloise stood like a shrine to luxury, its elegant Parisian exterior hiding a realm of exclusivity within. It wasn't just a shop, it was a symbol of status. Velvet-lined chairs, soft jazz echoing through gilded ceilings, champagne flutes glistening in the light, all whispered the same thing: if you didn't already belong, you weren't welcome. And Helena, the boutique's manager, made sure of that. Tall, sharp, and always dressed in flawless black, Helena didn't just run the boutique, she guarded it. With her stiletto heels clicking across the marble floors and her lips permanently pursed in judgment, she ensured no one without the right look or aura could disturb the boutique's harmony. It was her temple, and her rules were law. That law was challenged one quiet afternoon, when the bell above the door gave a soft chime and a woman stepped inside. She wore a plain white hoodie, soft gray sweatpants, and a black cap pulled low. Her sunglasses shielded her eyes. Her posture was relaxed, movements unbothered. But in Maison Eloise, her appearance was a siren. Helena, who had been adjusting a diamond brooch on a long-time client, turned. Her eyes locked onto the figure. A tourist, she thought. A browser. The kind that lingers without buying, snapping secret pictures. The kind that dilutes the luxury. Her heels tapped toward the woman. Clara, the young assistant by the counter, looked up. She recognized the routine. She had seen Helena do this many times. The woman walked along the racks, running her fingers over a silk blouse. She wasn't rushing. She was admiring. She stopped in front of a black dress, one from the latest collection, a piece that only select clients were invited to try on. Helena approached. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice pleasant but cold underneath. The woman turned with a soft smile. "Just browsing, thanks." Helena's smile didn't fade, but it sharpened. "Just so you're aware, all our items are couture. Custom pieces. We don't typically cater to casual shoppers." The woman nodded. "I understand." That wasn't the reply Helena expected. But it didn't stop her. When the woman reached again, this time for the black dress, Helena's patience snapped. She whispered to Clara, "Keep an eye on her. She might disturb the experience for real clients." Sandra, for that was who the woman in the hoodie was, continued browsing, her movements slow and deliberate. The whispers started from the velvet sofa in the corner. "Who let her in here? Look at those clothes. Must be lost." Helena tried to remain composed, but her irritation swelled just beneath the surface. She made her way back to Sandra with a practiced smile, trying to keep up appearances. "That's a beautiful piece," she said, nodding at the dress in Sandra's hands. "Though perhaps I could suggest something more aligned with your style." Sandra tilted her head slightly. "My style?" Helena's smile never faltered. "Yes. We have a few relaxed pieces that might feel more comfortable for you." Clara's stomach turned. She had heard Helena's tone many times before, but this time it made her uneasy. Sandra replied, still calm, "You think I wouldn't be comfortable in this?" Helena blinked, thrown off for a moment. "It's just, some pieces are meant for women who understand their value." Sandra gave a soft, amused laugh, controlled, not cruel. "And you think I don't?" A hush swept across the boutique. Helena's posture stiffened. "Some clients don't recognize what goes into couture." Sandra smiled faintly. "Interesting. Because when I walked in, no one offered me champagne." And just like that, the atmosphere cracked. VIP clients looked up from their seats. Sales staff froze mid-step. Clara's eyes widened. Everyone knew the golden rule: champagne was offered to elite clients upon entry. Always. Helena tried to recover. "That must have been an oversight. I'll have one brought." "No need," Sandra interrupted, voice cool as glass. I've seen everything I needed." Then she turned to Clara and gently asked, "Do you think this dress would suit me?" Clara hesitated, her gaze shifting from Helena to Sandra. The silence thickened. Then she took a breath and said, "Yes. It would look incredible." Sandra gave Clara a quiet nod of appreciation and turned, holding the dress gracefully over her arm as she walked, not toward the door, but toward the register. Helena blinked, then followed. "What are you doing?" she asked, trying to keep her tone composed. Sandra stopped just short of the counter. "I'm buying it," she said simply. Helena let out a short, disbelieving scoff. "Really?" Sandra removed her sunglasses. The room changed. There was a collective gasp. A hush that wasn't requested but demanded by the gravity of the moment. It was her. Sandra Bullock. One of the most recognized and admired actresses in the world. Standing in sweatpants. In a hoodie. In her boutique. Helena's confidence crumbled in an instant. Her eyes widened in horror. But before she could say a word, the boutique's entrance chimed again. The sound echoed this time, like the opening note of a performance no one saw coming. The doors opened, and in walked Keanu Reeves. The room stopped breathing. Dressed in a long black coat that moved with quiet authority, Keanu walked with unhurried purpose. His hair was slightly disheveled, his gaze unwavering. He didn't look around. He didn't need to. He walked straight to Sandra. And without saying a word, he wrapped his arms around her. It wasn't a greeting. It was a reunion. "Too long," he whispered. "Far too long," she murmured back. They held the moment for just a few heartbeats longer. Then Keanu stepped back and scanned the boutique. His eyes, calm but razor-sharp, finally met Helena's. "I hope they treated you well," he said to Sandra, but his words were for Helena. The impact hit like a glass shattering. The silence deepened. Everyone felt it. Even the walls. Helena stood frozen. Because now it wasn't just Sandra Bullock. Now it was Keanu Reeves too. And whatever illusion of control she thought she had, was gone. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. You could hear hearts pounding, breaths being held, eyes refusing to blink. Sandra turned her gaze to Helena and, with the calm of someone who already knew the ending, said, "Unforgettable." Helena's lips parted, panic flickering in her eyes. "Miss Bullock. I had no idea who you were." Sandra raised an eyebrow. "And that justifies something?" Helena faltered. "It was a mistake, a misunderstanding." Keanu tilted his head slightly. His voice was quiet, but carried the weight of judgment. "A misunderstanding?" Helena swallowed. "We aim to create a selective experience." Sandra's voice remained gentle, but unyielding. "And that gives you permission to decide who deserves to be respected." One of the VIP clients, a well-dressed woman with a champagne glass still in her hand, stood up and turned to the room. "If this is how they treat Sandra Bullock, how do you think they treat the rest of us?" Another client rose. "I don't support places like this." The atmosphere flipped. What had once been smug and exclusive became tense, uncertain. The boutique's so-called prestige trembled under the weight of realization. Clara, hands trembling but eyes clear, reached up and unclipped her name tag. She placed it silently on the counter. "I'm done," she said. Helena's voice cracked. "Wait, Clara, please." But Clara didn't even glance her way. She turned to Sandra and Keanu, composed now. "May I walk you out?" Sandra smiled warmly. "Please." And so the three of them walked toward the door, past frozen clients, past silent staff, past champagne flutes untouched. Helena stood alone, surrounded by luxury. And yet, for the first time in her life, she had nothing. That evening, far from the velvet and glass of Maison Eloise, Sandra, Keanu, and Clara sat together at a quiet cafe tucked along a quiet Parisian street. The place was small, warm. No velvet ropes. No perfume in the air. Just people and coffee and stories shared over wooden tables. Clara held her cup with both hands. She still looked stunned, her mind replaying the events of the day. I don't really know what happens next, she admitted. I mean, I just walked away from everything. Sandra smiled gently. Sometimes you have to walk away from the wrong place to find the right one. Keanu nodded. And you didn't lose anything today. You just made space for something better. Clara looked between them. Thank you. Both of you. I didn't expect any of this. Sandra leaned back. We believe in standing up when it matters. You did that. You deserve better. At that moment, Sandra's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, then chuckled softly and read the message aloud. Boutique manager officially terminated. Videos hit 20 million views. Keanu smirked. Clara's eyes widened. That fast? She whispered. Sandra nodded. Truth moves quickly when it's real. And then she said the words that would close this chapter forever. Some people think luxury means power. But real power is knowing how to treat people. Keanu raised his cup in quiet agreement. Clara smiled, not because of what she had lost, but because of what she had found. And somewhere, back in a darkened apartment, Helena sat alone. No clients. No control. No name tag. Just silence. Because class without kindness is only costume. And sooner or later, the world sees right through it. The backlash was immediate. By morning, the video had made its way to every major platform. Headlines rolled in like a storm front. Sandra Bullock shamed in high-end boutique. Keanu Reeves responds with dignity. The viral encounter Paris won't forget. Clips of the confrontation played on daytime television and across international news. Social media lit up with hashtags. Hashtag respect is luxury. Hashtag Clara did right. Hashtag Keanu was watching. People weren't just outraged, they were awakened. Influencers spoke out. Celebrities quietly reposted. Former boutique employees shared eerily similar stories, the same smiles, the same judgments, the same tone. Customers swore they'd never shop there again. A boycott began. Inside her small apartment, Helena sat frozen. She had barely slept. The glow of her phone screen illuminated her face as she scrolled through a storm of tags and mentions. Her name trended for all the wrong reasons. The comments were relentless. I was treated exactly like that. Helena should never work in retail again. I hope she learns something from this, because we're done making excuses. Each line hit like a punch. She watched the video again. And again. Her tone. Her body language. Her smirk. It played like a courtroom testimony, and the jury was global. Then her phone rang. The name on the screen made her chest tighten. It was the boutique owner. No greeting. No sympathy. Pack your things, he said coldly. You're finished. She didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. The call ended. And the silence that followed wasn't luxurious. It was devastating. While Helena disappeared into a spiral of consequences, Clara's life was quietly unfolding in a completely different direction. Her inbox was full. Job offers, interview requests, messages from strangers saying thank you for speaking up. Some called her brave. Others called her inspiring. A few just said, "You gave us hope." She didn't feel like a hero. She still felt overwhelmed. But then came the message that changed everything. It was from the creative director of a boutique fashion house, a real one, with ethics at its core and kindness stitched into its culture. We saw the video, the message read. We want to talk. 2 days later, Clara walked into a bright office flooded with natural light. She wore a simple blouse and pants, no makeup, no flash, just herself. Sandra and Keanu were already waiting. You didn't tell me you'd be here, Clara said, eyes wide. Sandra smiled. We didn't want to make it a big deal. We just wanted to support you. Keanu nodded. This isn't charity. You earn this. The creative director entered, offered a handshake, and got straight to the point. We're expanding, she said. We want people who see beyond price tags. People who understand value starts with how you treat others. Clara listened, heart pounding. You'd start as a junior stylist, shadow a few senior team members, and learn everything. Clara blinked. Really? Sandra leaned forward. It's not just a job. It's a beginning. Keanu added, you said you wanted to grow. This is where that starts. Clara smiled. For the first time in days, she felt steady. This wasn't an escape from the past. It was a step into something far better. Across the city, Helena's apartment had become a prison of silence. The lights stayed off most of the day. The curtains were drawn. Her once prized wardrobe, racks of designer pieces and stilettos, hung like relics from a different lifetime. None of them made her feel powerful anymore. She scrolled through headlines, unable to look away. Every new article chipped further at the image she once clung to. The boutique's official account had released a brief statement, "We do not tolerate discriminatory behavior. The manager has been removed." No name mentioned. But everyone knew. She tried to call former colleagues, they didn't answer. She typed long messages, apologies, explanations, justifications, but never sent them. What could she say? That she didn't recognize Sandra Bullock? That she was just trying to protect the store? Would that erase the look on Clara's face? The embrace between Keanu and Sandra? The words, "No one offered me champagne." Over and over again, the video replayed in her head. Not as a moment, but as a mirror. She stared at herself in the bathroom that night. No makeup. No heels. No armor. And then, aloud, voice trembling but real for once, she whispered to her reflection. I was wrong. It wasn't an epiphany. It was a beginning. But some beginnings come after everything you built has already burned. Clara's first day at the new fashion house felt surreal. The building itself was nothing like Maison Eloise. There were no velvet ropes. No forced smiles. No whispered judgments in shadowed corners. Here, sunlight poured in through tall windows. Staff greeted each other by name. Laughter wasn't a threat to silence, it was part of the rhythm. Clara entered wearing a modest blazer and flats. Her nerves fluttered in her chest like birds, but she walked tall. The receptionist smiled warmly. Welcome. They're expecting you. Inside the design studio, rolls of fabric sat beside mood boards filled with sketches and textures. It felt alive. Like possibility. Midway through orientation, the door opened, and in walked Sandra. She held a bouquet of fresh flowers. For courage, she said, smiling. Clara laughed, a little stunned. You didn't have to. I wanted to, Sandra replied. You were brave when it mattered. That's rare. Keanu arrived shortly after, no fanfare, just presence. He gave Clara a nod. Proud of you. The director pulled Clara aside. You've got real instincts, she said. We don't teach that, you either have it or you don't. Clara spent the rest of the day learning, listening, absorbing. She was surrounded by mentors, not gatekeepers. And as the sun dipped low over Paris, Clara stood by the window with a warm cup of tea in her hand, looking out at the city that had once felt so far above her. Now, she didn't feel small anymore. Not because she'd proven anything to anyone else, but because she had stood up, and that changed everything. In the days that followed, the story slowly faded from headlines, but its echoes remained in hearts. Sandra returned to her work, but she carried something new in her silence, a quiet pride not in being recognized, but in having stayed calm when it counted. Keanu resumed his projects, as grounded as ever, but his presence in the story continued to ripple across social media. People called it the hug that changed everything. And maybe it had. Clara settled into her new role. She still made mistakes, spilled a coffee on a mood board once, forgot a client's name twice, but no one mocked her. They taught her, supported her, trusted her. She had left behind a boutique of cold marble and judgment, and found a studio filled with growth and grace. Sometimes, she still thought about Helena, not with anger, but with reflection. Because even the people who hurt us can become our greatest teachers. And Helena? She was no longer trending. No longer quoted. Just gone. She had tried to rebuild quietly, but the world remembered. A few months later, a photo surfaced, her, in a different city, applying for a job at a smaller boutique. No one paid much attention. Because Helena's story was no longer about her. It was about what she had failed to understand. Respect isn't earned through price tags or power. It's earned by how you treat people when no one is watching. Back in Paris, Clara stood in the studio one evening, watching her team arrange a new display. She smiled, stepped forward, and offered to help. And when a nervous intern joined in, fumbling with fabric, Clara leaned down and whispered, "You're doing great." Because now she knew what it meant to make someone feel like they belonged.